It's a virtual private network. You're trying to run. You're trying to add, for instance, this machine to the rest of my network as though I'm there. Right? I want this machine to become part of that network. So you set up a private network or an address range. That's what I have here. I'm saying my server. I'm saying this configuration file is for a server because I'm configuring the server here. So I'm saying server. I'm saying what the address range is. I'm saying 192.168.230.0, and it's a 24-bit net mask. Right? So basically, it's 256 addresses in that class C. So all of my clients that connect up are going to have an address in that range. And my server in this case is, I don't know if I specify that here. My server, where I say what address my server is going to have. Take the first one. I'm sorry?
It says right there it gets down to 1.
Yeah, I think by default it just gets .1. It's been a long time since I set this thing up. But, well, yeah, for example, they're showing the 10.8.0.1 is what the server's going to get. Because I said 192.168.230.0, that's the network I'm using. The server is going to be .1. All the workstations that connect up, all the clients that connect up are going to be .2 and so on. I'll actually show you where that is. Actually, it's not true. In the CCD directory is where I set up all my client configurations. So here I've got a whole bunch of clients that can connect up. These are machines that I've configured. Some of these machines are gone now. But like this machine here that I'm on, it's called the Verisity 6500. Here, this is where I'm setting what the server IP address is and what the client IP address is. The server is going to be 43. The client's going to be 44. I think. And I can also set routes. In any big network, you're going to have a lot of other networks that machine connects up to, or that server connects up to. So you can set these routes, and when my client connects up, it's going to add these routes to the routing table of the client. So now the client is automatically able to see other machines on other networks that my local network knows about. So that's what's going on there. Other machines in this directory. Obviously, that's this machine. There's another machine that's .19 and .20.
So why would you set up a route like that? I mean, don't machines know how to route anyway?
They used to with routing protocols like Route D, but that's kind of gone out, right?
Like with private networks, you don't necessarily know which networks are exposed across the link. And so by doing these routes, you can actually say that my corporate network is composed of these networks that tell
and I could do without
to go out to the internet or to come through the tunnel.
I could do without setting it like this. I could just set that VPN link as the default route. If I want all my traffic from my laptop to go to the server, and then let the server figure out how to get to the various machines, if I set the default route up at that machine, that would work just fine. The problem is then if I want to go to CNN and look at the news, or if I want to go to the Weather Channel or something from my laptop, I don't necessarily want those to go to the server in Clarkston before it gets out to the world, right? So I don't set it as the default route. I set up specific routes that I'm interested in.
Why do you have the two addresses? I don't understand.
The OpenVPN kind of sets up a point-to-point network between the two. It's really kind of more like PPP, the way it sets up a network. Yeah. So you can see I've got a config file here for each one of my clients that connects up. You don't have to have a config file, and if you don't have one, you're not going to get the routes per client, and you're also not going to be able to specify the IP address that the client gets every time. By having a config file in this directory for each client, I can do that. Also, I can specify, actually I don't do that here. You can, in order to do OpenVPN, you have to have SSL keys to do it. It uses a similar mechanism that SSH uses for authentication using SSL keys. I'm not going to show how to do that with OpenVPN because I've got a whole lot more to show a little bit later.
The other advantage of having individual client profiles is if you don't want to run NAT mode, you want to do bridging mode where someone on the corporate network can connect back to your PC. You can have individual client profiles and run in bridging mode where you actually have an IP address that's addressable. So it's, it's for cases where, I have a remote server that's connecting into the corporate network and I want to be able to reach back to that server for some reason.
Yeah. The other type of VPN that I want to talk about that some people here are using is IPsec. How many people are using IPsec? IPsec is it's become fairly popular. A lot of firewalls or VPN devices that you buy to support IPsec. I got into IPsec a couple of months ago. I picked up an iPad. And I really wanted to get my iPad connected to my corporate network. I want to be able to read my email, browse my internal web with the iPad. The iPad does not support, at least not that I could find, a way to run OpenVPN. It does support right out of the box IPsec. I thought, great, I can use that. So after several days and lots of help from a friend of mine, we got IPsec working. To do that,
IPsec is a protocol, and
IPsec is actually it's a protocol, like TCP or UDP. IPsec uses was it protocol 51, I think?
55 and 54.
Yeah, something like that.
A lot of appliances today, like that router that he's got up here, that Gibson's got, a lot of times if those support tunneling, they support IPsec.
Yeah.
And what I did find with it, at least when I used it years ago to look up a bunch of tunnels to a bunch of remote sites, we had 6 different router brands and a firewall that did IPsec. All those different brands worked as far as tunneling IPsec. Okay, so that it was, the protocol was obviously followed because they could talk to them even though the brands weren't the same. So, because a lot of times if you wanted to do VPN tunnels, what I noticed again years ago was that you had to have the same brand but you don't talk. Well, that wasn't the case with using IPsec. We had an ESOP firewall. I think it was ESOP, and then I said I had a Linksys, I had Netgear, I had Falcon, and all these different routers, and I could create tunnels with them.
The IPsec was intended to be vendor neutral, and in the last few years they've pretty much achieved that. In the beginning,
It's pretty easy to set up now. Years ago, you had to know a lot about to set it up. Now it's pretty, point and click, and you can set it up. So
support for IPsec on Linux is still always been kind of difficult. It's there's OpenSwan. That was the IPsec package you could install on a Linux box. Then, I don't know, about 6 years ago or so, they actually rolled the IPsec protocol into the kernel. So you didn't have to install an OpenSec type, an OpenSwan type, was it FreeSwan? Yeah, you didn't have to install that. You actually had the IPsec protocol built into the kernel. It sounded like it was going to be awesome. It turns out that the kernel implementation is rather buggy. So there's a new project that grew out of I think what was FreeSwan, then OpenSwan. Now there's a project called StrongSwan.
Why would you want to do one versus the other?
It kind of depends on what your client wants.
But other than that, I mean, is it Coke versus Pepsi, or is it
as far as what, FreeSwan, OpenSwan,
or IPsec versus OpenVPN? What's the
technology difference? Well, I wanted to support an iPad.
So it's there and not.
I couldn't do it with OpenVPN. The iOS devices, and I don't know if there's OpenVPN for the Android devices, but pretty much every machine out there now has an IPsec. You take Windows XP, Windows 7, you take Mac OS.
But have you any idea what the technology difference is in the way that they do it?
The SSL-based VPNs tend to be a lot easier when it comes to things like firewall traversal. So if you go onto a customer's site they're very likely to be blocking IPsec outbound. So if you get back into your corporate network, it's problematic. Whereas with like SSL VPNs, in most cases, the firewalls can distinguish SSL VPN traffic from standard web, secure website traffic. And as a result, many people use it as a means of phoning home into their home office, even though they're on a customer site. That may have like security policies that prohibit it.
Yeah, I've been subverting a firewall rule for years by using OpenVPN. I actually have it, and it works particularly well if your customer has a firewall set up that you can't get in, and they won't poke a hole in it for you. So I just set up an OpenVPN client on the other end, and it phones back to me. It basically phones home to my VPN server. So it's establishing an outbound connection to my server, and then I can get in just fine.
NAT traversal is also a lot easier with SSL VPNs in the sense that
Yes.
if you're on, you come over to my house and I have a wireless router or whatever. With an IPsec VPN, unless I take specific action to configure that wireless router to allow IPsec traffic out, you're not going to be able to connect back to the corporate network. Whereas with an SSL VPN, you usually get through transparently.
Yeah. It's not impeded by NAT and other routing issues. Whereas if you want to use IPsec and you've got a NAT firewall in place, you have to configure for that. And there's some NAT traversal code in the IPsec systems that as long as you configure it on the server, you can make it work. Put this over here. I've just got a couple of links here for the IPsec sites that I used. Strong Swan is the package I loaded on my server. Configure that. L2TP. This is a wiki that I'm using, and it displays displays it kind of funny. I had to set up L2TP. That's it's layer 2 tunneling protocol.
Microsoft.
Microsoft typically uses PPTP.
I'm sorry?
But I thought newer operating systems have the
All the newer Microsoft stuff have L2TP.
Yeah, like through IPsec, yeah. Like typically, like Microsoft, like the earlier solution was PPTP.
Right.
And,
there was
as IPsec became more standardized, typically.
Yeah,
you'll find it using
the
IPsec.
first VPN that I worked with was PPTP, and on Linux there was a server called PopTop.
Yeah.
And it worked pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if it's still available though.
Yes.
Is it for Linux?
And in fact, like Ubuntu has a PPTP client built into it. You can like connect to PPTP networks just through Network Manager.
Yeah, you can install the PPTP Network Manager module or
Plug in or whatever.
I don't have a way to connect my iPad to the projector. But I do have a network connection. I've got one of these Verizon MiFi things, so I do have a connection.
Do you have a
network connection on this?
web camera? You could just point it at that?
I don't. This has a camera.
Hey, I
But
saw
not
a commercial
outbound,
today for this airplane, and you should be able to just like beam it right to the screen.
I think I just go like that. Anyway, the iPad has a VPN screen.
Jim, try throwing this on your laptop and then seeing if you can do it.
It'll work that way.
Connect this to your laptop. Then point this at.
Let me see.
Cheese?
Cheese, what's that? Cheese is the
Webcam viewer.
Yeah, do install.
Well, I don't want to take a lot of time doing that because
Oh,
I need
that's
some
right.
time for the rest of the
So,
stuff. Anyway, who's got an iOS device, whether it's an iTouch or an iPhone or an iPad or
I got a Droid.
yeah. they all have the same IPsec implementation built in. So when I got this thing set up, I can connect from my iPad to the office. I also installed I set it up so that I can do this. My iPod. It's basically just a small version of this, right? But I can connect up to my office with this now. And if I had an iPhone, like Craig's got an iPhone, we can configure that to connect up to my VPN server. And it all really works quite well. And once I connect up, I can bring up the email client and connect up to my email server. I can browse my internal web. I can
Well,
run
once
the
you
SSH.
connect IPsec with that, what then do you use to connect? I mean, obviously you can connect a browser to
Yeah.
your email, but
Yeah.
can you run any kind of terminal session? Could
I've
you-
got an SSH client on here.
Okay, all right.
If you want a decent SSH client, it's called Prompt. I don't know if anybody's
I
played
use
it.
ISSH on this one.
ISSH.
Yeah.
We'll recommend it. I tried Prompt, and it really works nicely.
That's cool.
How much is Prompt?
$4.99, I think. It's like the most expensive.
No, it isn't.
It's the most expensive one I've bought. I like the free ones, or the 99-cent ones. Let's see.
This was $4.99, or
Yeah, I think it's $4.99, something like that.
You said ZH.
Mine does X-Men does though.
Yeah, mine doesn't do X, but I don't use it.
And it also makes the phone really, really hot. Yeah, which means it's eating.
But with that's the client. I have to enter a passcode because I installed. I created a public-private key pair for this, like Craig was talking about with SSH. I installed the private key on this machine, and I have to enter a passcode in order to open it up. And right now, I don't remember what that passcode is.
Do the
Yeah.
password for the laptop there, so if you're selling cheese, you don't have time to use it.
Yeah, well, while I'm talking, you can do that. Where is it? Oh, you're going to snap. It's up here on the screen. If you want to drag it over. Because I'm not there. Here. Because it's over here. Not run the mouse left-handed. Obviously, by putting by configuring IPsec between this and my server now, I can connect to my corporate network, which is really quite handy. And it's just as easy to do it from the iTouch as I said. It's basically the same operating system or an iPhone. Other VPNs, I'm not getting into real in-depth details on these. I'm kind of thinking that if we wanted to have a real presentation that got into the nitty-gritty of it, we could do that sometime. If you guys are interested in it. How's that going?
We're on this network, so we don't.
Well, actually, we're on that network.
Oh.
Well, given that security is such an important topic these days, it might be good to have a series of talks on different security topics.
Yeah, well, and tonight was really designed to touch on all these subjects, to kind of open up the dialogue on it.
You've got this connected to that.
Yes. How many? I know, Tom, you've played with one of these kind of things, haven't you? A little MiFi.
Yeah.
I found these things to work really well. I used to have the USB dongle that you plug into the laptop, and that gives you a connection. Which one do you have?
It's the standard Verizon one with an extended battery.
Oh, okay.
3dstore.com.
Is that the Novotel one?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the Novotel one. I just don't have the extended battery. I didn't know you could get an extended battery.
3dstore.com sells it's like $90, but then it lasts
Really?
for 3 to 5 hours. Actually, about 6 hours.
Cool.
At least on my motorcycle on Saturday.
Cool.
you did it.
Okay, Kip, we're expecting a presentation on what you just did.
Yeah, I don't know what he just did.
Oh, you just installed cheese.
It was kind of cheesy though.
Get, install, cheese, enter.
Here, you run that. 'cause,
Yes, it'd be for what kids are already building.
Or on camera.
Can we go?
Yeah, you'd be the tripod,
Now, of
right?
course, if you jailbroke it, you could run VNC.
Oh, nice and blurry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why is it?
I think you could turn a ring on the front to
Is there a
adjust the
focus on it?
Yeah.
If I do that, I think I'll turn the thing inside out.
Actually, OpenVPN is available.
On the very front of
Is it?
We'll try moving it
Or
closer
jailbreak.
and further away.
Isn't there
Oh.
a focus ring on the front?
geez.
Yep.
No, there's
Oh, it's great.
Self-portrait.
Smile.
Oh, that's effective. Well, you had your finger pretty focused.
Well,
Oh, there
that's
you go.
close. There you go.
Alright.
That's almost
Figured it out?
acceptable.
You know what?
I can read it.
There, that was good.
Yep, that's good enough. Okay, so with that, I will go to VPN. Actually, I just have to, that's general, right? VPN, I think I can just swipe that thing. And are you getting the,
So it's connecting.
you can't actually see
There,
it.
it says on.
Yep. Yeah, it's on. There's a little swirling thing. There's a VPN indicator right there that, I don't know if Craig can get a better shot of that.
No, I can't.
There's a little icon that stays up there where it shows the signal strength that I have on my wireless, then it shows a VPN indicator. So basically now I'm connected to my VPN. Unfortunately, there's really nothing I can show you of my corporate network.
Yeah.
But it does connect, and it does work.
Yeah. There's no OpenVPN on it though. I mean, by default. You did for your OpenVPN.
Out of the
Yeah, with IPsec on it, like you had.
Yeah, right.
I haven't installed anything extra on
It's
it.
supposed to be intuitive, so don't think.
Oh yeah.
No, it is.
Anyway, that's how you turn it on.
It also supports PPTV.
So general network. That's right. You can also do it here. VPN. Status connected 1 minute 7 seconds. Right. And, that's showing my.
This is the artistic MTV shot.
It looks
that's
real
where
good
I have
though.
my password, my secrets, all that kind of stuff. This is using L2TP. Well, you can't see them. It's using L2TP, which is running over IPsec. You can run just IPsec, but I understand you really want to run a protocol like L2TP over IPsec.
Why?
I wish I knew. Because my buddy Marlon told me I needed to. But I couldn't run PPTP if I had a PPTP server, if I was connected up to a Windows server. So anyway,
You can use that to connect to an XP box too, right? So-
Yes. Yes. I don't know if an XP box could be a IPsec server, but I think.
No, but PPTP, I'm saying.
PPTP
Yeah.
server,
That's, in the pro version, it comes with a
yeah.
user.
Anyway, that's, I
server.
brought down the VPN. What I don't like is if you let this thing sit idle for a little while and it goes to sleep, the VPN comes down. And if you have customers using, I've got a customer at the doctor's office and they're using these to check people in at the front desk. And occasionally the thing goes to sleep. And they get all annoyed because they have to bring the VPN back up. So.
They're using those because they can like go sit down with them and walk around with
No,
them?
it's for you know, when you go to the doctor's office and they check in at the front desk and then they're in the waiting room and they're waiting to be called back, and at some point somebody will come with this and open up the door and say, Mary Smith, Alice Jones, come on back. And they're doing that on this because I've got an application that allows them to manipulate the patient on the screen to show that the patient is moving their way back into the inside waiting room. Okay, you can stop showing me. Freaking me out.
Say cheese.
Yeah, so those webcams are available at Micro Center for like $15.
All right.
Is there any way to really get focusing so they're really sharp?
Well, like I say, it only costs $15. What do you expect?
You get about $15 worth of focus.
Right, okay.
See, high focus is you move it in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now for the fun. The part I've spent a lot of time on lately. How many people are doing web-based development? right? How many people have set up SSL keys and SSL certificates for that web-based thing? That's real important in my line of work. We're dealing with medical information. We absolutely have to protect that. You can create an SSL key and get it signed, and you can use that key for lots of different services. The one everybody is familiar with is using it for web-based encryption. Right? You go to, most of us go to http://www.something. That's an unencrypted connection between you and between your machine and that other server. Right? So basically all the data passes through that in clear text. If you're doing passwords, if you're doing medical information, that's really not something you want to be doing. For years now, really, I'm not even sure when it started, probably almost since we've had browsers, there's been a way to do that in an encrypted way using the SSL. If you see a URL that starts with https://something, that's an encrypted connection, or should be an encrypted connection. I think the browser enforces it to be encryption, or it tells it whines loudly if it's having a problem establishing the encryption or the trust. The way you enable that in a web server is you have to create a key pair, kind of like how Craig created a key pair for SSH. The tool you use to do that, or the tool you can use to do that, is in a package called OpenSSL for Linux. And I'll run through some of those commands and I'll show you how we can configure that.
So it's not required to contact a signing agency?
Well, you can self-sign it. And I'll show you, we'll go through the process of creating a key and self-signing that key. Okay. The thing is, like, if you just create a key pair, you install the private key on your server, and if you let other people have the public key, whether you give it to them and they import it into the browser, or you offer it up through your browser, through your server, should anybody just trust you? Right? If you create that encryption thing, should people just automatically trust that you're legitimate and you are who you say you are? Like what? Right. What would prevent me from creating a system, a website called Amazon.com, and hijacking their DNS somehow? Right? That happens. What would prevent me from setting up a site like that, having people come to my site, and I make my site look just like Amazon, and I ask them for their credit card numbers, and they key in their credit card numbers, and I just withdraw all the money out of their bank, or I hit their credit card and max it out. That's the whole idea of secure HTTP. With HTTP, it's the ability to encrypt that data and also authenticate that you are who you say you are. So you create a private key and a public key, and you create a certificate signing request, and you send that to somebody that's a reputable firm. Let's say Verizon's got like 48% of the market. I was reading about this today.
Wow.
Verizon and I'm sorry, not Verizon. VeriSign and their subsidiaries, Thought and a bunch of others, they have 48% of the market.
They charge for that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. VeriSign, to get a certificate from VeriSign that's good for 1 year, it's $300. Okay, so that's basically you create a certificate request, you send it to them, you pay them $300, and they will sign it and send it back. Now it's not as simple as them just signing this request. They actually, part of the service that they offer is they're supposed to be trustworthy. They're supposed to do some verification that you are who you say you are. Right? I can't just create a certificate request and send it to VeriSign and tell them that I'm Amazon.com, and because they're going to ask me to prove that I am Amazon.com.
Yeah, typically it provides stuff like your Dun & Bradstreet number,
right? Your DMV number,
your certificate of incorporation.
I've got one for my website for Veris.com, and I had to go to the bank and have my banker notarize my request. I had to write a letter saying I am this person from this company, and he had to basically sign it and notarize it, and that I had to send to the company that I got my certificate from. The first time I did this, I did it with VeriSign. It cost me $300 for a year, which is a lot of money. I did it again about a year ago, only this time I used Komodo. They've kind of been in the news lately. There's been some breach in their trust. One of their
for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, for the wrong reasons. A company like VeriSign or Komodo or several others, they can actually have sub-licensees of their brand or of their root key, so that people can resell the services of Komodo or of VeriSign. And one of their
This little RSA security key, they apparently somehow got hacked and
yeah, that's another mess. Anyway, one of Komodo's or two of Komodo's partners was putting out keys that were not thoroughly trusted, not thoroughly vetted.
And they got a DLL that had the passphrase encoded in it or something, or visible.
Yeah. Anyway, it became possible to get to get a for people to generate signed, trusted certificates that weren't necessarily reputable or good or valid.
Well, so one of the things I've heard, like at some big corporation, is that they got tired of paying for, something that they just use internally from one system to another. So they set up their own
so you
services.
self-signing, and that's very handy if you just want to use it within your own network. And I've done that for my my Jabber server. I've got a certificate for my Jabber server so that my instant messaging communication between my client and my server is encrypted. I've done it for my IMAP server so that I can get my email.
Even in addition to self-signing, though, it is very common for large Fortune 500 companies to have their own certificate authority, where they actually distribute a root certificate to all their desktops.
To do self-signing, you're basically doing that.
Well, not necessarily, because a self-signing certificate is, typically applies to the one host. A certificate authority certificate actually goes into your certificate store. And the idea is that certificate authority is used to sign additional certificate server certs.
I'll even show how to do that.
Yeah.
Because I've created my own CA cert, and I've self-signed that, and then I can distribute that. I can install that in a browser so that any certificate that's created by that CA is trusted by the browser. Now, a browser comes right out of the box with several. That it knows about several CAs or certificate authorities. It knows about Verizon or VeriSign. It knows about Komodo. It knows about GoDaddy.
It has 300 or several hundred.
Is that what it is now?
If you go to Firefox, it's there, including the Turkish government has it, the Hong Kong post office has. So do you trust all these people?
Yeah. In fact,
I disabled them all and I use the Perspectives extension.
Let's see. Go into your browser and go to Preferences. Go to, is it under Security?
It's advanced.
Advanced.
Encryption.
Encryption. You can see it all right? It's pretty blurry. I see it just fine. So I can view my certificates.
How did you get there again? You went that pretty fast.
Edit, Preferences, Advanced, Encryption. Are you in Firefox?
Yeah.
I usually have to poke around to find it. But here is all the certificates that it knows about. And AOL's got theirs, and Komodo, the Komodo CA Limited. That's who my certificate was created by. Dell's apparently got their own. GoDaddy in here, and Equifax. Basically, lots of companies that are.
So who knows how secure all of these are? There are hundreds.
Well,
of them.
you're sort of trusting these companies, right?
Yeah.
RSA.
Microsoft, you're trusting Microsoft.
Yeah, you trust RSA.
I'm like, in corporate environments, it's not uncommon to actually remove all the CAs except for, a few that are actually considered trustworthy for your corporate purposes.
Yeah.
So you don't trust the random Russian CA.
Yeah. There's several from Thought. Now, Thought, we've all got a connection to that. Thought was his company that was created by Mark Shuttleworth back in the 90s. That's how he made his money. He sold the company to VeriSign. I keep wanting to say Verizon.
Yeah.
He sold it to VeriSign for something like 500 million euros, which is now that's
750.
yes, yeah. At the time, it was like 550 million US dollars, and that's the guy that's funding the Ubuntu project and a bunch of other things. So there's big money in being a CA, if you're one of the first, I guess. GoDaddy's there, and anyway, these are all. If you have a certificate that's signed by one of these organizations, you're golden. Your site will encryption will work, and your browser will trust you, however you say that. So you close all that stuff down, and you might be wondering how you create this certificate. Yes.
Good question. Is that list separate from what is in ETSI SSL certs?
It's quite possibly a different either subset or superset of what's in.
It varies by product. There tend to be various stores of CA certificates. Like Firefox has their own, and various
Firefox is going to ship with their own
don't necessarily
set.
share the same certificates.
And it may be a superset or subset of what's in ETCS.
Okay, so they are separate. It's not like Firefox links into
No.
Firefox on the Microsoft platforms they do. It is very common for various applications to share the same certificate store because the operating system actually provides a certificate store.
Yeah.
But when you talk about like the Unix platforms, typically each application has their own.
Well, well, if you're using OpenSSL, which links to the library, it has to have the certificate somewhere, and that's probably using ETC. Firefox, Chrome, and the others have their own internal certificate stores.
Yeah.
But generally, anything that the system uses, SSL, will use one of the local certificate stores.
The reason I'm asking is because I can do a test for a certificate to a site. Firefox will work just fine. If I use Perl, it doesn't work. I'm assuming it's got two different stores.
Correct.
Yeah. Something's not set up right.
Yeah. And you can go grab that certificate. You could export that certificate out of Firefox and probably install an ETC SSL and then tell curl to use that. And it could work.
Yeah, the presence of CA certificates in these various certificate stores is entirely a negotiated process between the CA manufacturers and the software vendors. So, VeriSign went to, the Mozilla organization and said, put these certificates into your certificate store, and they agreed to it. And in some cases, it's in exchange for large amounts of money. But, that's why, in general, you'll see that like Firefox and Internet Explorer have roughly the same sets of certificates because those CAs went to them, they either gave them money or established a trust relationship to load them in.
Thanks.
Let's see. Here's just some notes I have. I'm going to go through the process of actually creating these. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more question. You mentioned that VeriSign is like $300 a year.
Yes.
Are there any other sources for getting that sort of thing that cost less than $300?
Yeah. Yes.
And how about a lot less, like maybe even close to free?
Free is impossible.
Well, he could probably give it to you for a couple bucks,
Wouldn't do
The
anything.
point is, anybody could sell that service to you if you wanted it, but it's not going to be worth anything because they're not going to be connected to anything.
Yeah, because if you, give you an idea, I did 1 year with VeriSign was $300, and they kept hounding me to renew it, and I knew I needed to renew it, and out of the blue, I got a phone call from a Komodo salesman, and he told me about all the benefits of going with Komodo and how great they are. Right? Komodo's got 15% of the market, not nearly as big as the rest, but still big enough.
How much?
15%.
Yeah, it's a good piece.
Yeah, it was enough for me.
Yeah.
And the guy was a slick talker, and he talked me into it. Anyway, I got a 5-year certificate from Komodo, and I think it was $199 or $249.
Wow.
So 1 year from VeriSign, and of course VeriSign, if you go with a multi-year, the price does come down.
A little bit.
Right.
Like a 3 year is $500.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's better than
Well,
$900, right?
For that $300, are you getting the so-called premium data?
No, that costs extra. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's the standard certificate, and then there's like the extra secure certificate.
There's a
And
new
I'll
one.
show you how you tell the difference.
There's a new place called digicert.com that's probably a little bit less and a little bit easier on.
But do the browsers know about it?
Yeah.
Because what you really want to do, especially if you're facing the public, is you want the browser to automatically know about you.
Yeah, because
You
there's
can-
ways to get
you
the
can-
certificate
You
accepted.
can offer up your signing certificate for them to install in their browser, but if a user has to do that, forget it.
Yeah, there are two different definitions of free in this context. In
Yes.
the cases where it's some Joe Schmo giving out certificates, in those cases you typically have to have all of your browser users install a CA cert into their browser.
Right.
The other definition of free is the case where, as a result of your hosting agreement, they're giving you a certificate, presumably at no cost. And in those cases, it actually is provided by a real authority.
Yeah.
And basically, they just bundle, they've negotiated volume pricing.
Yeah, you're
and
still
built in
paying
price.
for it, it's just bundled into your
Right.
monthly maintenance or whatever. Anyway, let me increase that font size. I'm going to try and go through the process of creating a key pair and creating making myself a certificate authority, and then telling the server about my key pair and telling the browser about my CA, and you'll see that we'll end up with a nice encrypted connection. So I'm going to create the key pair. Can you guys see that, or should I go
Make it a little bigger.
The problem is some of the command lines are rather long.
That's fine.
That's fine.
That's okay. Okay, so OpenSSL is the command you want to use, and there is a book on it, the OpenSSL book. No, well, current. This is the newest one. I think it was 2001.
Yeah, nothing. Very little has changed.
Yes,
Any
the online
perspective.
documentation, the man page for OpenSSL is excellent. There's a lot of options to the OpenSSL command. It can do a lot of things. We're just going to touch on a few of the things that it does. First thing I'm going to do is create a key for my server. So I use the OpenSSL Gen RSA. I'm going to create an RSA key. Remember, Craig talked about DSA and RSA. RSA is the one we want to use. I'm going to put it into a file called server.key. It's 1,024 bits that we're going to use. I think I could use up to 4,096. That right there is going to create me a private key. And it's actually going to create a public-private key pair. Okay, so there, it's done. Remember that nice little ASCII art image that Craig saw when he did the SSH keygen? Well, instead we get dots and pluses.
And the 1024 was what?
The number of bits it's going to
Number of
use for the
bits.
key. Right? The more bits, the better.
Right.
I just went with the default. If I look at the server key file, that's it. I think that's actually the private and public key, although it just says private key.
The private key for RSA has all the information to regenerate the public.
Okay, private key contains everything it needs. Okay, so that's my key. Now the key itself doesn't do us much good. I can install the key in my web server, but nobody's going to trust it if it's not been signed by a CA. A CA is a certificate authority. Right? So I'm going to create a signing request for this, and to do that, I run OpenSSL request new. My key is server.key. I'm going to put out server.csr. That's a certificate signing request. I'm going to create a file for me called server.csr. This is where I get to identify who I am, some information about me, and information I want embedded in my certificate. So I'm from the U.S., Michigan is my state, city is I'm gonna say, well, let's say Southfield.
So this is what you see when
This is the
someone
information-
says.
They want to view the certificate. This is the information that is embedded in the certificate.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to do that. Organization entity, I'm just going to say MUG demo SSL. Right? Organizational unit name, I don't need to fill it in. Common name, this is important, and it's confusing because it says your name. So I'm tempted to put in Jim McQuillan, right?
Mhm.
No, this is the name that we're certifying, right? So the name of my machine here, it's generally going to be your fully qualified domain name, is what you want to put in there, of your server. If you're a website out on the internet, it could be www.amazon.com if that's who you are and you're creating the key for. My machine is called E6500, L6500.local.averis.com. That's the fully qualified host name for my machine.
Is that actually checked against anything? Is it important to have that
It's
accurate?
important when your browser, when your client connects up with their browser, they're going to connect up to e6500.local.averis.com, and the comparison is going to take place. If they don't match, it's going to spit out a big old warning saying.
Well, it also depends too, because some certificates, we had a problem with this over at SourceWork with one of our sandboxes in that. It depends, the name that you put in there, you can't, there's some of them where you can't use it across multiple machines in that. We had a huge
Yeah, there's
problem
you can do a wildcard certificate. I've not
Yeah,
done
and
that.
it's really hard to get right.
Yeah, I've not done that. I can enter other information in here, like I can put my email address, and all these kinds of things are going to show up in the certificate. Here's where I can put a password in. And this is a passphrase to unlock the private key. Got to be careful here. I think it's a good idea to do it, but if you go to restart your Apache web server, it's going to ask you for this key when you restart it. So if you need a machine that can be rebooted automatically, a key here, or a passphrase here, can cause you a problem. I think for any public-facing system, it's a good idea to put a passphrase on this, and then know that when you restart the machine, you have to go manually restart Apache and enter this passphrase when you do it. I'm going to leave it blank for now. Okay. And there, we've got my server.key. That's the public-private key pair that I've created, and there's the server signing request, the key signing, certificate signing request. If I edit that, it's just enveloped in this begin certificate request. If you were going to go through VeriSign or GoDaddy or Komodo or anybody, this is the file you want to send to them. There's nothing private in this file. There's no private key in there. There's a public key in there and some identity information in there. So you would send that to Verizon or VeriSign. Let's just create an alias.
Verizon, great alias, yeah.
Create an alias. You know, when I say Verizon, I mean VeriSign.
Verizon is listed as one of the certificate authorities. I was just
Okay, good enough. So you're going to send this to Komodo, and they're going to do a number of things to try to verify that you are who you say you are. They're going to try. They're going to look you up in the Better Business Bureau. They're going to look you up in Dun & Bradstreet. They're going to look you up in the phone book to see if I'm saying I'm Averis.com. They're going to look that up in the telephone network to try to find a phone number that goes with that, and then they're going to call that phone number and see who answers. Right? They don't rely on just one of these things. There's a number of things that they're going to do. They're going to ask you to provide a notarized letter that says you are who you are. They might ask you for a utility bill that shows your company name and that kind of a thing. There's a whole bunch of ways they can do it. They don't need to do all of them, but they're going to try to do multiple, at least a couple of those to verify you are who you are. All right. So once they trust that you are that site, that you own that site, I think they're going to do a who is on the name server domain to make sure that you actually own that domain. They're just going to basically do their best effort to verify you are that person. Once they do, they're going to sign this. They're going to generate a certificate and sign it with their CA key. Okay, and they're going to send it back to you. And that file is going to end in .crt, and you're going to install that and the public key. Once you've done that, you can throw away the CSR file. All it is a sign-in request.
You got a
can generate a CSR file anytime you want.
Got a question way in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, does this CSR have some sort of, does it have some sort of a fingerprint so you can refer to a fingerprint in your letters and so forth?
Well, it's got your public key, and the way you send this to them, you go to, at least with Komodo, last time I did it, you go to a website and you upload the file, and you fill in some other information, and it generates a ticket number, and that's basically your request. The file itself could be inspected with some OpenSSL, with an OpenSSL command line that'll spit out all of the identity information.
I just was curious because you're going to also send a notarized piece of paper.
You got to tie them all together. There's usually a customer ID or something when you start this process with VeriSign or Komodo. You're gonna be assigned at least a customer ID, possibly an incident ID to tie it all together. It works pretty well, I think, the whole process. I've gone through it a couple of times. So you're going to get back a CRT file. That's the certificate. That's signed by the CA. And it's the
long did it take them
hours. Well, last time I did it, it took a while because you can't look up Averis.com in the phone book and get an actual phone number because I'm using John Loudon's phone service. And I got a VoIP account and it's not all cross-indexed properly.
Renewals tend to take less work too.
Yeah, renewals are certainly easier. But the whole process doesn't really take that long if everything's in place. I ended up having to go to the bank and get them to notarize something, so I think it probably took me 2 days to actually make it all happen. So we're not going to actually send this to Komodo or VeriSign tonight because we don't want to pay the money. We don't want to pay that kind of money. So what I'm going to do is self-sign it. I'm going to create my own certificate authority, so I'm going to act like the big guys and have my own CA. So the way we do that is with another set of OpenSSL commands. And I'm going to generate, I do OpenSSL, gen RSA, it's another RSA key, dash out ca.key 1024. Okay, that just created another key. If we look at my direct folder, now we got a ca.key file. I'm going to create a CSR, a certificate signing request again. Dash new, dash key, ca.key, dash out, ca.csr. I'm going to create a ca.csr, that's a certificate signing request. I do that, it's going to start asking me questions again. I'm in the United States, I'm in Michigan, I'm in Southfield. Organization name, MUGS CA. Organizational unit name, common name, kind of doesn't matter at this point what we put in there, so I'm just going to put SMUG CA again. Because we're not actually doing a website here. Email address, I'm going to just leave that blank. I'm not going to put a password on it again, just for simplicity, although I recommend you do put a password on it. So now, I've got a ca.key and a ca.csr. Now I'm going to self-sign this ca.csr and generate a new certificate. So with that, I do OpenSSL X509. And I'm sure there's people here that understand X509 a whole lot better than I do. 9131, I think, is 35 years. 25 years? It's a lot of years.
3,600 days would be 10 years. So yeah, it's about not quite 30.
Yeah.
So
I think we're
about 25 years.
25 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, this CA is good for 25 years. Right? I have to give it some additional arguments. I got to tell it where the OpenSSL config file is. I'm still providing all the options on the command line, but there's a lot of stuff you can put in that file. This extension v3ca is what's going to allow me to self-sign it. I'm self-signing ca.key. Dash in is ca.csr. I'm actually signing it with the CA key. Dash requests. We're doing a request out ca.crt. Finally, that's going to sign it's going to create a CA certificate that allows me to use that then to sign my server key. So I do that.
You put the REQ.
I'm sorry?
Or where's the C?
The extension flag should be plural. There should be extensions.
Was there some how-to you found on how to do all this?
My buddy Marlon.
Yeah, okay.
There are a lot of, there are a lot of. You
There's
search
a
for,
lot of
like,
stuff out there.
Generating self-signed certificate in OpenSSL,
Yeah.
it'll come out with 10
That
pages.
goes, this has been around for 10 years.
Oh, I know, it's been around a long time, so.
Yeah, and there's a lot of scripts out there to automate a lot of this process for you. I kind of wanted to go through the actual steps.
Sure, I understand it.
Right. So there, now all I had to do is run that command and it signed that CRT. Had I put a challenge password on my CA key or on my CA CSR, it would have asked that when I was. So anyway, I've got a certificate now. It's the biggest file I have now is CA.CRT. Looks like all the others, right? Only this is a certificate.
There's actually a command, if you do x509-text, it'll actually print out the properties of the
Is it
certificate.
OpenSSL X509-text CA.CRT?
You probably need to do -in first before the CA-CRT. If you scroll up, you can actually see.
Yeah, it's all that cool stuff, right?
It's also a bunch of extra stuff too, dates and
A whole lot
times
of stuff.
Yeah. and all
Well, the
sorts.
validity period was based on the current time clock and that day's parameter. So if you want to see,
So it's
Oh, yeah, there it is.
2026.
Yeah, so it was 25 years. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got a certificate now. Using that certificate, I can sign my server certificate signing request. One of the things I found, which confused me, is I have to have a file called ca.srl, which is used for
Serial numbers.
Serial numbers. So what is serial numbers?
Yep. There's actually a serial field that's associated with the certificates, and it's a counter. And the idea is, as a CA, you can actually provide serial numbers for your certificates, so you can keep track of them.
Yeah. Okay, so I just echo a 01 to it. That's the starting serial number. So now I've got that little file. I see that SRL. And I got that. Okay, so now I get to finally do what I set out to do. X509-days. This one I'm going to do for 10 years. I'm creating a certificate that's good for 3,650 days. CA is my CA CRT. CA key is CA.key. Now I'm going to sign I'm going to generate a certificate from the CSR. Request -out server.crt.
How's that different than the last generating command you gave? What's the difference between the two intentions?
History, rep, open analysis.
The first one self-signed the CA certificate itself. Now he's signed the server certificate with the CA certificate.
If you can see it, this one is self-signed in the CA, like you said, the CA certificate. And then I'm using that CA certificate to sign my server.
That made him a certificate authority so that he could sign other certificates.
Yeah.
That's what the CA stands for, is certificate authority.
Yeah.
So now I've got a server.crt and a server.key. Those are the two really important files I need. I can throw away the CSR files because I can generate those anytime I want. You really want to hang on to the CA stuff so you can sign more certificates later if you like. All right. So now I want to copy those server.crt and server.key to my etc.
ESCP there.
Yeah, I should tell it what I want to do. /SSL/private directory. Okay, so now I've done that. Okay.
Well, so it's interesting, you storing your certs in a directory that's password protected.
No, the directory wasn't password protected. That was just it's permission protected.
It's sudo.
Okay.
That was a sudo password.
That's just so I could be root to do that. Okay. So now I got to go tell Apache about this.
Also, in most cases, you'll make your server.key file permissions 600 like root, so that anybody else who has local access to the system can't read it.
Well, that's what I was getting to, is you really want to secure that directory down real well.
And like with the SSH keys, you could actually passphrase protect your server.key file, your RSA private key.
Yeah.
The downside of which, though, is if you reboot your server, you have to manually enter the passphrase in order to start SSL services.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna actually I'm super confused. To configure Apache, you need to install the Apache, the SSL module for Apache, and enable the default SSL site. That's a real good way to get started. I've already run those commands on this machine in my testing earlier today. Let's go to the Apache directory. How many of you guys configure Apache on a regular basis? Couple.
Real regular.
Ever?
Yeah.
Right. Apache, at least on Debian-based systems, is laid out in a bunch of directories, and you have to install the modules. Like if I look at the mods enabled, that's all the modules that I've got configured. And you see SSL.conf and SSL.log right there. You also want to enable the default site, default SSL site. So that's default SSL. This is the configuration file for Apache. Configuration file for Apache. I've told it what my server name is, and you notice that server name matches what I put in my certificate, right? E6500. Down here is where the fun begins. These two entries here are very important. This is where I point to my certificate and my key, right? And I've already done that. I tested earlier. I've installed a new certificate and a key. So let's. I have to restart Apache. There's a number of ways to restart it. That's a simple one. So now, now if I bring up the web browser, go to that website. It's going to be. Let's first just see if we can get to the web server, right? And that's e6500.local.avera. There, it works, right? That's not with encryption. That's just good old straight port 80 SSL. If I want to try the encrypted site, I go to HTTPS. Right? Oh. Okay? It recognizes that there's a certificate there because the server is offering up a certificate, but it's untrusted at this point. You guys ever seen this when you go to a website?
Yep. Oh,
you go to what you think is a secure website and you get this kind of a thing? Browsers have gotten much more vocal about this, trying to scare the bejesus out of you, right? I can look at the technical details and I can say it's an invalid security certificate. It's not trusted because there's no issuer chain has been provided. What it basically means is my browser doesn't know me as a CA. My CA certificate is not in the browser right now. I can say I understand the risks, and I can add an exception, and I'm going to say I don't want to permanently store it. And I can get around all this stuff, and I can confirm that, and I can actually get to the machine. So now I've got a secure connection. Right? I think that exception is there for the session of the browser.
Okay, so if you have we were talking about internally securing systems.
Yes.
Should we see that if it's internally trusted?
It's been set up properly. No, you shouldn't see that. Now, part of setting that up properly is telling the browser that I'm a valid CA. So I have that file that I created. Let's see. That was in Home Jam Bug SSL demo. In there, the ca.crt file. I need to grab that. In fact, let's just go. Let's go there. What I need to do is import that file into my browser. Now I can go into my browser configuration where I showed you that we can look at all the certificates that it knows about, and I can import it there. But Firefox and Internet Explorer make this really easy. I think Safari does too, but unfortunately Chrome doesn't yet. They make it really easy. All I got to do is browse to a site that has the CRT file on it. So I can copy the ca.crt to /var/www. There, I just installed that on my web in the
root directory of the
root directory of my web server, right? So now if I go back to my web browser and I try to get there, so I can go http://e6500.local.avera.com/ca.crt.
Oh.
It says, downloaded a certificate. And what kind of certificate is it? Well, I'm identifying a website, so I'll check that. I can view it if I want. All right, it's MUG-CA. That's who the certificate authority is. All right. This CA is good until 2036. There's the fingerprint if I want to verify that. Anyway, I've said I want to trust. I want to use it to identify websites. I'm going to say OK. There, I just installed it. Now, if we go to that URL again, http://e6500.local.averos.com. Right, it works.
You didn't override it?
I'm sorry?
You didn't override it?
Override what?
The certificate error, the error message.
I restarted the browser since then.
That doesn't help. Or you didn't say save permanent.
I told it not to save it permanent.
Yeah, he did say that.
Yes. Okay, now it's blue. What you really want is green. That's the premium certificate that you can pay even more money for. And they will go through extra checks to make sure that it's
So those are color coded now based on the CA?
Yes.
Yeah, all the
That's
Yes.
So like Bank of America will be green because they spend $1,000 on their certificate.
Yes, and really, it's a way for the CAs to make more money.
Does anybody know that? Other than the deal is if you do a Google search, and the link is highlighted and with green and says, hey, this is a safe site.
Yeah. If I do the same thing, this is Chrome, right? That was Firefox I was playing with. If I do the same thing in Chrome, E6500, you get a different kind of.
Green there.
Why did it know that?
That's not the,
Oh, you didn't do this. Well, no, you didn't want the search.
Yeah, I haven't installed that cert here. That's interesting. That's a different. Earlier today when I was testing this, I installed a CA cert, and I installed it in Chrome. Well, the certificate that my server is offering up is not the one that was signed by this.
Oops.
That's kind of interesting. Firefox didn't like it. Chrome doesn't seem to care. So number 3. Anyway, IE, Internet Explorer, will also graciously download a CRT file and let you install it. If I go to e6500.ca.cert, Chrome just happily downloads it and doesn't see. Chrome, can you see that down there? Yeah. Chrome just downloads it for you. It doesn't actually import it. With Chrome, you have to go in through this preferences, under the hood, manage certificates, and in here you got to say it's a server. It's actually an authority, and you can do an import and browse to where the file is and import it that way. And then it happily works. Not quite sure why it's accepting this certificate that wasn't signed by that CA. But that's kind of it for how to set up a web server. Now I can take that same key, that server key, and I can use that key and that certificate to secure my IMAP server for email. I can use it to secure my SMTP server. I think I can, so that my mail client can send mail through my SMTP server using secure SMTP. I can use it for Jabber to secure my Jabber server. I can use that same key for an awful lot of stuff.
The challenge you run into though is just that, like all those applications typically validate the common name. So,
As long as your server,
if you're self-signing, you're better off just generating different servers
Yeah.
that have the appropriate common names
Yeah.
for, mail.averis.com and jabber.averis.com.
Right.
And, yeah.
right, and I've got separate keys on my system, so I didn't realize you could actually use the same. Because I've got obviously a Komodo signed one for my external website, and I've got self-signed ones for my own services that I run internally. I can use that certificate for Postgres. How many of you guys use Postgres as a database? You can do secure connection between the Postgres client, whether it's PSQL or an application, and the Postgres server. You can encrypt that traffic using this. And I've actually gone through that process. I just don't. It's 8:45 right now. I don't
Yeah.
tell you, so, any questions?
Is that a standard encryption protocol, the encrypting database connections?
Is it standard practice to do that?
No, is there like an accepted
Let's use
protocol?
an SSL.
The SSL itself is a protocol intended to mirror, from an API standpoint, like the sockets interface.
Well,
Yeah.
your
so-
socket was, that's
Right, and so the whole idea is if you can SSL enable arbitrary protocols fairly easily.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They actually, if you look at most of the API implementations, just like there's, read and write, there's SSL read, SSL write. So the idea is if you're a software developer, you replace your connect call with an SSL connect call.
I think really it's the connect that's important. That reads and writes will just work that way.
No, because you still have to, what happens is you have to decrypt the communications as well. And so basically, SSL read and SSL write not only read on the socket, they decrypt the data so that what you get out of it is the unencrypted communications.
They're also encrypting tunnel proxies, so you just have the arbitrary, you just talk TCP going into it, and then it can do the SSL management.
Right.
The O'Reilly OpenSSL book actually talks about all the, if you're a software developer, the APIs that you can use to actually implement SSL in the existing applications.
Well, in theory, SSL, or also known as TLS, can be in part of your communication stack. So when you open the socket, you can specify that you want to use SSL over TCP or SSL over UDP or whatever, and then your normal connect, read, write, whatever will all do the right things.
Which operating system?
I've seen somebody do it on one of the DSPs.
But there are tunneling proxies that provide that sort of functionality. Yes, right. If you don't have an application that's SSL enabled by default.
I just want to try Amazon's secure.
Well, I guess that's kind of important because I was thinking that when you do an SQL query, the results normally
Sure.
come back unencrypted.
Oh yeah, it's all data
Through the
too.
link,
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, boy. Wow.
So if that's like in his case medical data, that
Yeah. How do
could
you
be a
get to
bad thing.
Amazon's? I guess maybe if I go to the cart.
Yeah.
Part of it.
Or your account?
Probably sign in also,
Yeah, sign in.
like my account or.
Like you replace with the SSL.
No, I am also. Oh, Amazon's blue. They're not even green.
Like they have one-to-one.
Yeah.
They haven't paid the extra money.
Oh.
I was my credit union, they're green.
Overload your functions.
It is surprising that Amazon's not.
Is that the only two colors that come up is blue and green now?
It's the only I've seen.
Do a Google search for Amazon.
Yeah, see, Comerica is green.
For eBay. Or PayPal.
Yeah, PayPal should be green, I'm sure.
Yeah, most of the stuff they're going to offer up through non-encrypted, but once you start logging in and any place you're going to give a credit card number, they're going to.
Normally, you HTTPS, there's a new HTTPS everywhere. Like a Firefox event or something to rewrite, just to try to protect the data and prevent fire sheet and things from work. GitHub is all SSL for that reason.
Even like Facebook now, you can enable all SSL.
Yeah.
To Facebook.
Facebook was gonna, allow the fire chief.
And Twitter, all those things. You can tell it you want to do SSL always. Anyway, there's a couple other things we wanted to cover tonight.
There are
About 10
more
minutes.
on the, we don't have much time left, but next up was to begin on wireless
Pass this around.
security.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
We don't have a time limit. If we just do it, we try to get everything done.
I think we should limit ourselves to 9 o'clock because otherwise,
We won't be able to get home and get it what we already do.
Wireless access point? See?
Well, give something, setting up, I want to let you know, this week I had 2 websites that I had with Network Solutions. The Network Solutions is still charging $35 a year.
Yeah.
Or discounted, 2 years is $30 each and so on.
Right.
So I was going to do a transfer. Well, transfers are a pain in the ass. So I went to do a transfer. You've got to actually get a hold of the one you're going from and get a transaction ID. So when I did that, they don't do it on the web. Okay, you have to call. And when I called and told them I was transferring to GoDaddy, because it was $7.95, they gave me a price of $9.95. Just so you know, so you can get that out of Network Solutions. Here, pass that.
Yeah, I heard GoDaddy was going to be sold. I don't know.
I think GoDaddy is getting a bad reputation lately too.
Yeah, I thought they just got sold.
So I mean, they were $7.95,
That's his-
or $7.75
Yeah.
to be transferred. But anyway, so that was.
Yeah, they'll do what they can to keep your business.
Well, that's a significant discount, like.
So you stay with them?
Yeah,
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 do
it's
that.
a lot easier, so that's why. So,
So did you get like a 10-year?
they said that, well, I signed, I think, for 3 years, but it was like $9.75, I think, a year, so.
Okay,
Just
so.
FYI.
Oh, DWRT.
So this is really a thrill to me. I was able to actually get my laptop to display. I mean, I was having problems with that for the last couple of months. So, messing around with, I found this little icon, you click on that and it allows you to do this. So I have all kinds of cool things I do. Okay, so I wanted to show you this. So I'm passing around this little access point. It's a little blue.
This thing over here?
Eventually it'll come back to me, hopefully. Anyway, so it's an older one, right? You can see that they're bigger and all that stuff. It's nearly identical in appearance to this other one. This is like from 2006, 2007. It's 8 megabyte internal memory. So it's like what we call the neutered ones. It's not very good. This one over here is the 16 megabyte. It's like, it's a good one. It's good enough that it can run this open source firmware called DDWRT, Word. So in Word, there's a lot of things you can do. It's not just an access point. It's not just a gateway. It's not just it can do all kinds of wonderful things for you. So it's a good product. Try to, if you have a something that supports this type of software, this is the one to go for, I think. So we were talking in the board meeting about wireless security. Some of us didn't know much about it. I didn't know much about it. Whenever I set up a wireless security, I just sort of poke at things until something works, right? And it tends to take a little time, but it does eventually work out. So Jim was suggesting, well, he'd like to know a little bit more about WEP and WPA. And I didn't really know, because I recognize those terms a little bit, those acronyms, but I didn't really know what they meant or anything. So I started a little bit of research and I volunteered to do a little talk about this. So in DDWRT, it's really simple to set yourself up with different security functions. So under wireless, under here, and then wireless security here, you can see that there's some drop-down lists here. So under the security mode, there's a number of options for you. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get a good access point that has a good software on it that offers you a number of different options. If you get a real old one, it's not going to have all these options for you, right? So the one of the main, I guess, options is WEP, WEP, or WPA. Okay, so those are the ones that I sort of like to center on for a moment here. So I have this little presentation I was putting together, and this is one slide. So here, just to give us it's alphabet soup, right? These security folks, I don't know what it is. They just like acronyms, and just could not, understand a lot of this stuff at first. And so I just wanted to find out, okay, what's the better thing? I don't need the enterprise-wide solution. I just need to know what should I be selecting for my home use. So this is kind of orientated toward that. So in Jim's question, what should I be using? WEP or WPA and all that stuff? WEP is like a wireless equivalent protocol is what that stands for, and it's an older thing. So I'm saying it's bad. Every time I went out there to look at what should I connect with, they kept saying WEP has been,
It's broken, it's equivalent of having no security.
Right, so it's like so bad. I mean, it's just, so easy to hack and figure out what you're doing over the wire. That's, wireless, that's not the one to go to. WPA and then WPA2, which is a little bit better. WPA was better, improvement, right? WPA's got a bigger number on it, so it's got to be newer, right? It's a better thing to use. So, and then drop down, we're looking at, those options. WPA2 is probably good for personal use. It's the Wi-Fi protected access 2. It's an IEEE 802.11i standard. So if you now get something that says Wi-Fi on it, it has to adhere to this IEEE 802.11i standard in order to have the Wi-Fi thing on it from whatever point forward they set that standard. Okay, so it should, what I'm saying is these older devices, you may have to upgrade the firmware in order to get some of this capability. So that's why DDWRT is really cool. It's free. You upload, this thing into your access point, and now you have all these additional capabilities. So now there's a couple other things that are like points of interest along the way here. Now I'll go jump back and show you where the drop downs are on that configuration screen. But the TCAP here is an encryption method or protocol that replaces WEP's 40-bit or 128-bit solution. It's considered better, okay? It's a step better. Now, I'll get to another one further down. It's a little bit better than that. But it was kind of limited in what it could do for you. But as it says a little bit further down here, each new packet is encrypted. So it's like it has salt or starting point, and then there's an algorithm that figures out what key to put in. And every time you send a packet out, it gives you another key. So it was a little bit better than still this other stuff that was being used. There's also the WPA message integrity check, which is another way for the packets to sort of like be verified to make sure that they weren't tampered with. That's a CRC. I don't know if you've done programming. You've done like take a number and you divide it by 11 and several every digit, and you take the remainder and do stuff like that. That kind of way of making sure that the packet wasn't changed along the way. It was like going back to the old days when you had wires and stuff that get rust on, and suddenly there'd be bits that were flipped and stuff like that. You do this encryption. This wasn't even encryption then. It was sort of like a check, a circular redundancy check to make sure that your data wasn't flipped as it was going across. So they're just making these things better and better as we go along here. So WPA is message integrity check, and it's better than the CRC that was in WEP. Okay, and then as I said, TKIP, each packet has a new key to it, but the algorithm wasn't really as good as it could have been. So it's like, I don't know, some number like says that by the end of by the time the world ends, the current computers could hack through that and do that real easily or something like that. But this new one, the CCPM AES or AES, those two names are equivalent, is a really advanced type of encryption capability. The standards group that came up with this sort of sent out a note saying, "Hey, come on, give us options for some new ways of encrypting." And some guys, I guess, what was it, Norway or Finland or something like that. These two guys came up with this really cool thing, and they talked about it was like you have a grid of 4x4 grid, and each of these has number in it, and like pushes, so like, I don't know if you like do assembly where you roll left or roll right, and then you do all this, manipulation of the data to make it so that it's really hard to figure out what it is, okay? So it's like really intense kind of computing to encrypt that down. So there's another option, another thing you need to be aware of, and that's the WPA personal, which is like a personal level of security. And then there's another one, which is HPA Enterprise, which is like really intense, and you need a server for that. It's not recommended for people who are just doing their own home little things for their own laptops and things around home. So WPA personal is probably the one that we'd selected here just for our own personal use. Let me just drop back into this. So here I was talking about the WPA. That's one of the drop-down options. And then I was also talking about the TKIP and the AES. So of these things, you want to probably use the WPA2 and the EAS. And then there's something about a regular phrase that you'd use to, I don't know, 10-digit or 10-character code or something like that to put in there to as we were talking about before, like a key phrase or something. Okay, so that's really what all I wanted to say. Just this is a good way to do this. If you're ever going to set up a wireless connection, be aware of these few things, and then you'll have a much more secure system. Yeah.
Yeah, if you, by perchance, happen to have an older laptop, it may not support WPA2, and then you'll be stuck with the web. Or don't use that laptop, or just use that laptop wired in.
Or put Linux out so you have more capabilities. Right?
Okay,
So
yes,
there's a thing about hardware.
Or you go to the store and buy a little G transmitter for $9 and stick it in the side.
The problem is if you have a game like a
Old
PS
Nintendo
Lite,
DS.
PDA, things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Has anyone heard of someone doing it with DDWRT or somewhere installing free radius and running that on the router for radius authentication?
Yeah, just as a tip here, radius is
Actually,
another
running
one of
free
these
radius
options
on the
here.
router. So you're running the free radius server down the
Radius is, it's an authentication server, isn't it?
At least
That's
one,
not, I
at
think.
least one of the router Linux distributions like DDWRT does have a mini radius server in it, so that you can do full WPA2 authentication.
Okay. Yeah, like most of the WP Enterprise capabilities have to do with integration with radius and TLS.
Right.
But the expectation is that you have some, corporate authentication server that supports one of those protocols, and you're not actually running the radius locally. There's not a whole lot of value to that because you're, in terms of running out the loopback mode.
Yeah.
I found that before you fall in love with DDWRT, go down to their page and find out what's supported. Because they'll support Model 1 of that, not Model 2, Model 5, but not Model 6.
Well, that's because of the memory requirements, right? So it's not going to run on this. This doesn't have enough memory.
No, but what I'm saying is,
it's not
the router company
DDWRT
might
that's the
have
problem.
that chip in one model and a different chip in the other.
I knew in their router description, some of them actually say we are using the DDWRT.
They use that as a selling point.
And there's also OpenWRT.
And Tomato.
Yeah, Tomato's another one.
And the reason Linksys took half the memory out of that router is because after DDRT got done with it, with the version 1, it was more powerful than their Cisco router.
Well, actually, they shifted from using a Linux.
They went to
server
VxWorks.
Using I can't remember the name of the company, but something that began with a V.
Yeah, basically they went to VxWorks, which is an embedded RTOS.
Yeah.
And, like a lot of that's all about cost reduction. Linux, even in embedded space, is fairly bloated compared to some of these embedded RTOS, these commercial operating systems. And, when you're selling millions of them, the difference between 4 megabytes and 8 megabytes of flash is
huge.
Huge, it saves real money. So, it's...
Okay, it's now almost 5 after 9. When we were at the library, we'd have been thrown out by now. Here at ESD, once we get in the door, we can stay till tomorrow morning if we wanted to. But I think it's a good idea to limit our meetings to 9 o'clock. It gives us a discipline in moving things along, although we did that tonight. But it also means that people aren't going to say, if I'm there till 11 o'clock. And we want to go to dinner too. So we had 3 more topics listed for discussion tonight, but I think we're just running out of time. And we should.
Well, so this tells us this is an interesting topic for the group, right?
Oh,
there's a lot of interplay of people talking and stuff.
Actually, the ones that didn't get done tonight could be add it to another one.
Well, we can do them one at a time, perhaps. We'll fill in we've done a command of the month. That's been a standard part of our, whenever we can get somebody to talk on, but we can put them in as second topics and fill it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So, that will then conclude our meeting. The only thing we have left is dinner, and I guess, I heard some dissatisfaction with Copper Kettlewood, not,
Copper Canyon.
Copper Canyon, wherever, that too. Shields tonight, is that, or does anybody else have another suggestion of where?
Jeez, sorry, everybody.
Fridays.
I don't care.
We've been there.
Oh, no, that's
It's loud.
Loud, yeah.
Just go to Big Boy or something.
Where the Microsoft people go tomorrow?
Okay, so, we'll do Shields, which is on 10 Mile and Telegraph, and, if you go south to 10 Mile and then just past Telegraph and turn into the parking lot there, you can get into Shields, easily that way, or you can take, whatever it is, Civic Center Drive here to Telegraph, and then you gotta do a little looping left.
Yeah, after the central meetings, we do go to Shields every month, so it's worked out pretty good.
They're fine.
Yeah. They get a little overwhelmed when they show up with 14 people, but it's,
No, well,
Two yellow cards?
yes.
Hand in the yellow cards.
Do we have a giveaway?
Do you want to give away? I can give away a little camera. I got a little tiny camera.
You don't need to give it away yet. I was just asking if somebody wanted to book.
Yeah, those other antennas that you have on your access point.
Yes.
You brought it.
That was,
Here's the giveaway.
Give away a shirt.
You want to give away a shirt? Or you want to give away
Well, I don't know. Just-
We'll give away shirts.
shirt's more valuable than this
Yeah.
thing. Okay, fine. So the antennas were Radio Shack $20, and that was like,
That's where you got your
2008
big long
or
ones?
something like that.
Because I got other ones that weren't that long, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, these are Radio Shack, $20, a couple of years ago.
No, you got them there a couple years ago, because the ones I got are about
it's,
2/3 that long. And I got them at Radio Shack, and it really helped my signal strength, but,
Yeah, it does help, right.
Yeah, I think we were guilty of having too much content.
Yeah, well, I mean.
A lot of good content. We could have easily left out the first stuff that I did. And just could have put this on the rest of the
I actually started a months ago. It's solid. It's been a great marvel. I've got got web service coming in, email, and different things that is different other things that I redirect through the marvel
That's a good idea.
to different servers. It works great.
Yeah, then we started showing them at 7:15 and 10 and tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll do, MD Love, we'll do like 8-hour, just, stuff.
Currently, do that eventually.
So at MD Love, we'll do like 8 hours and we'll just be so exhausted,
Like where you go to the site, if you want to vote, you vote.